I hate pretentious poetry, so.
This like analysis is just so strict and down to details versus topology, which is just so wishy-washy and just kind of like, yeah, it's out there.
This is it. Okay. I feel very awkward in front of the camera, but I have to give an introduction. So, hi, I'm Allie. I am a math graduate student right now. I'm getting my master's in math. This month I've been working on Math Poetry Month because April is National Poetry Month, maybe international, I don't know. It's also National Math and Statistics Awareness Month. I'm not sure how unaware people are of math and statistics, but anyways, that's what it's called. When I heard that April was both Poetry Month and Math Month, I decided I had to make a crossover episode, I guess. This is sort of that. I asked my friends, I didn't give them any details, I just said, can you write a math poem? They didn't know anything about the project, basically. And yeah, so I asked them to write these math poems. Once they were done, we got on a Zoom call, and I asked them a bunch of questions about math and about poetry and about their poem that they wrote, and I had them read their poems, and it was so interesting to me that they all ended up saying kind of similar things, and it was so much fun. I love talking to my friends anyways, but especially about math poetry. The amount of footage that I had at the end of interviewing my friends was over an hour and a half long. And so, as you can see, this video is not that long. So I cut out so much of the good stuff that they said, and I really wish that I didn't have to, but I also didn't want to make a feature-length math poetry movie. Yeah, just what I want to say before I let them introduce themselves and start talking is, to me, Math Poetry Month has been about humanizing mathematics, making math a lived experience the way the ocean and love and everything that we write poems about is a human lived experience. Math is not cold or inhuman. It's in fact vibrant and creative, just like poetry. Yeah, so this is Math Poetry Month, and thank you so much again to my wonderful friends. I love you so much. Thank you for doing what I tell you to do without asking too many questions. In the name of art, I love you. And without further ado, happy Math Poetry Month. Okay, so will you state for the record who you are?
It's like when I'm testifying in a committee.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Nathan Soltz, pronouns he and his. I professionally am the chief of staff to an Oregon state senator, and I have degrees in philosophy and psychology.
I'm Luke Davis. I'm a master's student at University of Montana.
Okay, cool. And you do math, right?
And I do math, yes. I'm in the math master's program.
I'm Melissa. My name is Melissa. Anything else I need to introduce?
Yeah, who are you? What do you do?
I'm an artist, I'm a writer, musician, all that fun stuff.
Do you think that math and poetry can go together?
One of the interesting and I think enjoyable things about poetry is that it can go with a lot of things.
Poetry and anything can go together.
I think anything could go with poetry, so sure.
Poetry, even if you have a specific topic, I think can be malleable enough that you can come up, because the rules are so loose.
Poetry expands beyond, what we learned in third grade about, stanzas and syllable accounts and, making sure that they rhyme and stuff like that.
Before you put the idea in my mind some time ago when you started writing math poetry, I never correlated math and poetry together. So if I was doing something math related, poetry, wasn't in my brain.
I haven't seen math poems before.
Well, I have enough confidence to know that I can come up with something eventually.
Usually it was I I would get an idea of how to start a story, and then I just have to go from there. And ending the story was always like the most difficult part for me, because I would get the ideas of how to start it, but not how to end it. But
because you just have to start somewhere. So I start, throwing spaghetti at the wall, and just start typing thoughts.
I thought about the different branches of math and how each one kind of had its own sort of character, made a few notes about each of their characters. And
like, okay, well, what about math?
I would just think about it for a bit, and things would pop into my head, and I'd type them into the notepad on my phone. And then as the deadline got closer and I realized I had to start writing, I would write based off what my notes were, and I'd flesh out a story from there.
Because you said it could be, anything that relates to math in any way. And so that was a chaotic time, just like trying to figure that out. And it took so long and so much thinking. And I even read an article about math, which I think I told you about that. And it was definitely like a really long thought process.
Well, I mean, for a long time in academics, it was all philosophy and then sort of branching off. But yeah, I've always thought that philosophy overlaid with a lot of hard sciences, of which I think math would be a part.
I mean, proofs are kind of poetic sometimes if they're well written. They're easy to follow, and they're just worded nicely, and it's just a nice setup. I mean, it's almost in a sort of a poem format anyway. It's super short sentences, and it's not in a paragraph or anything like that.
As I write down a bunch of lines, and then sometimes I'll pick some of those lines in that big long block of words, and I'll reword them a little bit, and I'll see what things relate to other things. And
I saw potential for that, because when I was listening to all these characteristics, I was thinking, like these are reflected in the proofs that you write for each of these branches too. And so I was thinking about that, turning a proof into a poem kind of a thing.
Okay, so I just called it Time. Sitting in a reverie, chin resting on my hand, staring at the broken analog clock hanging on the wall in my high school. The second hand had stopped moving around the clock face, but is still counting the seconds, just bouncing back and forth between 2-minute bars like a metronome. Keeping time but not telling the time of day, reminding me that time is passing, but withholding how much time has passed or how much remains. Me and the clock are both subjected to the existence of time, forced to move forward with it until we cease moving at all.
This is titled /math.homework/n- by Nathan Soltz. And I'll read it how I intended it to be read. Miles of road, the occasional car I'm driving down with seemingly no end in sight. I'm speeding because I don't want to waste time, even though I'm uninterested in arriving. I stop before too long. I don't have to, but it breaks up the monotony, though I don't mind it. Actually, I've come to enjoy it. Or maybe I always have, and as I walk back to the store, I peek in my back seat, and I see the stuff that doesn't belong to me there and on the floor. He walks in, meandering and indifferent, like anyone else, but aware. He picks nothing in particular and pays with a forced but believable smile. He takes a look in the back seat again, just for good measure. You sit down reflecting on where you just were, how distant the recent past really is, how recent the distant past really is, and you start driving again with your own arm on the ledge of the door. To break up the monotony, you roll down the windows and open the sunroof. The sunroof shade always open to give an air of openness, but you can't remember the last time we actually rolled down a window because you hate the noise. And his mouth homework flies out and you roll them back up, but somehow you're still pining.
This is our space. We have compactness and this simply connectedness, but not this connectedness. So our surjectively injective function is bijectively continuous on a Hausdorff manifold, which is homeomorphic to two circles rotated around an exponential torus in R4. But S1 is not epihomeomorphic to a complete triangle in the leaf topology. So our space was a partition Clopin quotient space all along. Clopen is one of my new favorite math words.
It is so poetic too because it's like closed and open.
I was never really one of those people who thought that we shouldn't have to do it. Just doing any kind of math, even if you're not implementing it into like real life, is still exercising your brain in a way that's going to benefit like all parts of your brain, I think. Yeah, I respect math.
So I hope you had fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to think about. And I totally think you're onto something. I mean, I used to do a lot of fantasy writing, and it's totally like math. I mean, if someone's allergic to parrots, you have to like keep that in mind as the story goes on. You can't just all of a sudden crazy things happen that contradict the world you're building.
So if I could choose one piece of homework to fly out the window, it would have been my math homework.
Who is your favorite mathematician?
You and Justin. Him in the room. Ouchie.